Hi folks, your EGYPTONERD is back, and this week we're getting mythological. One of the key episodes in the Egyptian mythic timeline is the conflict between the gods Horus and Seth, this story even having various modern retellings of varying quality. The myth is referred to in different sources from different time periods, from funerary spells to narrative fiction, so there's varying different possible versions. Here's the gist though. I suppose that in telling the story of Horus and Seth you have to go back to the beginning of everything. If you remember the episode on creation myths, according to the Heliopolitan account, the sun god created the world along with 3 other generations of gods. Now Ra was the original king of Egypt and the world, which he then passed on to his son Shu and eventually through to his great-grandson Osiris. Osiris and Isis are sort of the prototype king and queen, and Egypt seemed to be doing very well under them. However, Osiris's brother Seth had other ideas. Seth is associated with the desert, storms and foreign lands, and can generally be a chaotic, though not necessarily evil figure. Seth was jealous of Osiris and wanted the throne for himself, so he murdered his brother, chopped up his body, and scattered the pieces around Egypt. Osiris's wife, Isis, was obviously pretty upset by this, so set about finding the pieces of Osiris's body and gathering them together. Now, Isis was great in magic, and so, with the help of the jackal god Anubis and her sister Nephthys, who was actually married to Seth, awkward, she gathered the pieces together and bound them up to form the first mummy. She then took the form of a bird, and hovering over the body of Osiris, she used her wings to blow the breath of life into his nose, resurrecting him. Osiris then becomes the god of the afterlife and goes off to rule the next world. Now, while she was doing this, she managed to get things functioning with Osiris, and through this conceived their son Horus. Isis knew that Seth wouldn't want a rival to the throne, so she sent her infant son off to be hidden in the marshes of the Nile Delta. Now, Seth sent various dangers to try and kill his nephew, but they were all unsuccessful, and so Horus eventually grew to manhood. Eventually, Horus returned to contest with Seth for the throne of Osiris. A tribunal of gods was called, and so begins a whole series of episodes in which the 2 gods compete with each other to try and prove themselves the rightful holder of the office. Now, most of these episodes involve Horus outwitting Seth in some way, but Horus himself can also be pretty bratish. There's even one time when Isis shows a bit of sympathy towards Seth, so Horus cuts off Isis's head. She's fine though. Horus tricks Seth into racing stone boats, which ends embarrassingly for Seth, and there's a bit of an odd incident with a lettuce. Basically, Seth says at one point that he and Horus should just be friends, so he should come over to his and chill, and then tries to have sex with him, basically to establish his dominance. But Horus catches Seth's divine offering in his hands, and with the help of Isis, Horus spreads his own semen onto a lettuce in Seth's garden, which Seth then eats. So when the 2 of them both turn back up at the tribunal, and Seth boasts that he has done the work of a man to Horus, Horus is like, actually no. Now, going back to when Horus threw his tantrum, he storms off into the desert, but Seth is there waiting. He pounced, threw Horus onto his back, and pulled out his eyes. However, the goddess Hathor comes to the rescue. She milks a passing gazelle and then pours the milk into Horus's eyes, magically restoring them. This is the origin of the symbol known as the Eye of Horus, or in Egyptian, the Ujat, or whole eye. This represents the restored Eye of Horus, and it's a very powerful symbol, since it epitomizes the Egyptian ideal of the triumph of order over chaos. After a lot of toing and froing with the gods supporting Seth and Horus and Seth again, it's eventually decided that Horus should inherit the office of his father. He's placed on the throne, becoming a god of kingship in the process, and then Seth is compensated by being given a role in defending the boat of the sun god as he passes over the sky and through the underworld. Now, this is a very Egyptian way of sorting things out, since the Egyptian legal system focused on reconciliation and compensation where possible. This is because the emphasis was on restoring the harmony of social order, which was itself part of the greater scheme of the cosmic order. But that's another story for another time. That's all there's time for. Be sure to like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you again soon. I'm your EGYPTONERD, and remember, there's always more to discover.